This story is set sometime after when the schools were integrated um, with the black and the white students. At one time, black students went to one school and white students went to another school. And then at one point, they forced the two races to go to school in the same building and trying to break down the racial barriers. Um, so this story is going to be about a woman that I presume to be white. It never says if she's white or not, but she obviously doesn't fit in with the neighborhood. Um, and she is coming into this community that is predominantly black. And I make that assumption based on their references to foods and things like that. But there's not or maybe even Spanish, but it's definitely a minority group. And this woman who is a painter is going to come in and paint something on their wall. And these two young boys feel very offended that she should have the right to come in and paint on their wall. But in the end, it's going to be a positive thing. So The War of the Wall by Tony Kadi Bambara. Me and Lou had no time for courtesies. Courtesies means being nice. We were late for school, so we just flat out told the painter lady to quit messing with the wall. It was our wall, and she had no right coming to our neighborhood painting on it. Stirring in the paint bucket and not even looking at us, she mumbled something about Mr. Eubanks, the barber, giving her permission. That had nothing to do with it as far as we were concerned. We've been pitching pennies against that wall since we were little kids. Old folks old folks are the elderly people in the neighborhood, have been dragging their chairs out to sit in the shade of the wall for years. Big kids have been playing handball against the wall since so-called integration with the crazies across town poured cement in our pool so we couldn't use it. I'd sprained my neck one time boosting my cousin Lou up to chisel Jimmy Lyon's name into the wall when we found out he was never coming home from the war in Vietnam to take us fishing. So Vietnam was a war that America got involved with, and it was not a good war. We did not win that war, and we lost a lot of soldiers. And apparently, Jimmy Lyons was one of the soldiers that was killed in Vietnam. If you lean close, Lou said, leaning hipshot against her beat-up car, you'll get a whiff of bubble gum. That's something you chew. Mostly kids chew it. And kids sweat. And that'll tell you something. That this wall belongs to the kids of Talia Farrow Street. I thought Lou sounded very convincing, but the painter lady paid us no mind. She just snapped the brim of her straw hat down and hauled her bucket up the ladder. You're not even from around here, I hollered about after her. The license plate on an old piece of car said New York. Lou dragged me away because I was about to grab hold of the ladder and shake it, and then we'd really be late for school. When we came home from school, the wall was slick with white. The painter lady was running string across the wall and tapping it here and there. Me and Lou leaned against the gumball machine outside the pool hall and watched. She had strings up and down and back and forth. She began chalking them with a hunk of blue chalk. The Morris twins crossed the street, hanging back at the curb next to the beat-up car. The twin with a red ribbon was hugging a jug of cloudy lemonade. The one with yellow ribbons was holding a plate of dinner away from her dress. The painter lady began snapping the strings. The blue chalk dusted, measured off halves and quarters, up and down, and sideways too. Lou was always about to say about how hip it all was, but I dropped my book satchel on his toes to remind him. So what the lady's doing is she has this string that it's a special string for painters or construction people. And when you snap it, it leaves a line on the surface that you snapped it on. So it's like it has blue chalk attached to it, and that blue chalk sticks to the wall. So she's laying out and she's parceling out her wall for her how she intends to paint it. The Morris twins Some good aroma was drifting from the plate, leaking pot liquor. I have no what that is, but I think it might be grease, you know, onto the Morse girl's white socks. Let's just see what a pot liquor is, because I have no idea. Define pot liquor. Not used in the southern U.S. Let's see if we can copy that and put that in an image. Okay. Okay, so here's some pictures of it. So it looks like so pot liquor is, it looks like some kind of meat, probably pork. All right. And it's mixed in with those collard greens. So this is and if you'll notice right here, it's a very common African American dish. So let's close that. I could tell from where I stood, it was baked ham, collard greens, and candied yams. Let me see if we can get a picture of that. See, that's what it is. That's baked ham. Oh, looky here. There's baked ham, collard greens, cornbread. Oh, and those are candied yams right there. All right. It says all interesting foods. And knowing Mrs. Morse, who sometimes bakes for Mama's restaurant, a slab of buttered cornbread was probably under there too, sopping up some of the pot liquor. Me and Lou rolled our eyes, wishing somebody would send us some dinner. But the pantry lady didn't even turn around. She was pulling the strings down and prying bits of loose tape. Side Pocket came strolling out of the pool hall to see what Lou and me were studying so hard. He gave the painter lady the once over, checking out her paint splattered jeans, her chalky t shirt, her floppy brimmed straw hat. He hitched up his pants and glided over towards the painter lady, who kept right on with what she was doing. What you got there, sweetheart? He asked the twin with a plate. Supper, she said, all soft and country like. For her, the one with the jug added, jerking her chin toward the painter lady's back. Still, she didn't turn around. She was rearing back on her heels, her hands jammed into her back pockets, her face scrunched up like the masterpiece she had in mind was taking shape on the wall like magic. We could have been gophers. Gophers is a little kind of a small creature that lives out in the prairie. I'll show you what a gopher looks like. So as far as she was concerned, they could have been this cute little. She wasn't gonna pay attention to them. Is basically what they're saying. See the cute little guys, and they live in the grassland prairies. All right. Crawled up into a rotten hollow for all she cared. She didn't even say hello to anybody. Lou was muttering something about how great her concentration was. I bet him with my hip, and his elbow slid off the gun machine. Good evening, Side Pocket said in his best, ain't I fine voice, but the painter lady was moving from the milk crate to the step stool to the ladder, moving up and down fast, scribbling all over the wall like a crazy person. We stood beside, we um, we looked at Side Pocket. He looked at the twins. So Side Pocket is his nickname. The twins looked at us. The painter lady was giving a show. It was like those old-timey music movies where the dancer taps on the tabletop and then jumping all over the furniture, kicking chairs over, and not skipping a beat. She didn't even look where she was stepping, and for a minute there, hanging on the ladder to reach a far spot, she looked like she was going to tip right over. Ah, said Pocket. Side Pocket cleared his throat and moved fast to catch the letter. These young ladies here have brought you some supper. Ma'am? The twins stepped forward. Finally, the painter turned around, her eyes full of skies, probably meaning that she has blue eyes, as my grandma would say. Then she stepped down like she was in a trance. She wiped her hands on her jeans. As the Morris girls twins offered up the plate and the jug, she rolled back the tinfoil, then wagged her head as though something terrible was on the plate. Thank your mother very much, she said, sounding like her mouth was full of sky too. I bought my own lunch. I brought my own dinner along. And then, without even excusing herself, she went back up the ladder, drawing on the wall in a wild way. Side Pocket whistled one of those, oh brother, breathy whistles and went back into the pool hall. The Morris twins shifted their weight from one foot to the other, then crossed the street and went home. Lou had to drag me away. I was so mad. We couldn't wait to get to the firehouse and tell my daddy all about this rude woman who's stolen our wall. All the way back to the block to help Mom out of the restaurant, me and Lou kept asking my daddy for ways to run the painter later out of town. But my daddy was busy talking about the trip to the country and telling Lou he could come too because Grandma can always use an extra pair of hands on the farm. Later that night, while me and Lou were in the back doing our chores, we found out the painter lady was a liar. She didn't tell the truth. She came into the restaurant and leaned against the glass of the steam table, talking about how starved she was. I was scrubbing pots and Lou was chopping onions, but we could hear her through the service window. She was asking Mama, was there a ham hock in the greens? And was that a neck bone in the pole beans? And were there any vegetables cooked without meat, especially pork? I don't care who your spiritual leader is, Mama said in that way of hers. If you eat in the community, sister, you're going to eat pig, by and by, one way or the other. Me and Lou were cracking up in the kitchen, and several customers at the counter were clearing their throats, waiting for Mama to really fix her wagon for not speaking to the elders when she came in. So this woman that's coming in and painting this wall doesn't understand the rules of their community, the respect that's supposed to be shown for the elders. Um, The painter lady took a stool at the corner and went right on with her questions. Was there cheese in the baked macaroni? She wanted to know. Were there eggs in the salad? Was it honey or sugar in the iced tea? Mama was fixing Pop Johnson's plate, and every time the painter lady asked a full question, this means a silly question or a stupid question, Mama would dump another spoonful of rice on the pile. She was tapping her foot and heating up a dangerous way. But Pop Johnson was happy as he could be because he's getting more and more rice. Me and Lou peeked through the service window, wondering what planet the painter lady came from. Whoever heard of baked macaroni without cheese or potato salad without eggs? Do you have any bread made with unbleached flour? The lady asked Mama. There was a long pause, as though everybody in the restaurant was holding their breath, wondering if Mama would dump the next spoonful on the pantry lady's head. She didn't, but when she set Pop Johnson's plate down, it came down with a bang. When Mama finally took her order, the starving lady all of a sudden couldn't make up her mind whether she'd have a vegetable plate or fish and a salad. She finally settled on the broiled trout and tossed salad. But just when Mama reached for a plate to serve her, the painter lady leaned over the counter with her finger all up in the air. Excuse me, she said, one more thing. Mama was holding the plate like a frisbee, tapping that foot, one hand on her hop. Can I get raw beets in the tossed salad? You will get, Mama said, leaning her face close to the painter's lady, whatever Lou back there tossed. Now sit down. And the painter lady sat back down on her stool and shut right up. All the way to the country, me and Lou tried to get Mama to open fire on the painter lady. But Mama said that seeing as how she was from the north, you couldn't expect her to have any manners. Then Mama said she was sorry she'd been so impatient with the woman because she seemed like a decent person and was simply trying to stick to a very strict diet. Me and Lou didn't want to hear that. Who did that lady think she was, coming into our neighborhood and taking over our wall? So one good thing that you can notice here is that, and that you could use in your paper about diversity, is looking things through other people's eyes, trying to see things from other people's perspective. Instead of mama losing her temper with a lady, she tried to understand where she was coming from. She probably had a very strict diet, and that's why she was asking all those questions that was irritating mama. So that is a good example of how you learn about each other so that you can um, get over your differences. Well, mama drawled, pulling into the filling station, which is the gas station, so daddy could take the wheel. It's hard on an artist, you know. They can't always get people to look at their work. So she's just doing her work in the open, that's all. So mom was really trying to understand her. Me and Lou definitely did not want to hear that. Why couldn't she set up her easel downtown or draw on the sidewalk in her own neighborhood? Mama told us to quit fussing so much. She was tired and wanted rest. She climbed into the back seat and dropped down into the warm hollow Daddy had made in the pillows. All weekend long, me and Lou tried to scheme up ways to recapture our wall. Daddy and Mama said they were sick of hearing about it. Grandma turned up the TV to drown us out. On the late news was a story about the New York subways when a train came roaring into a station all covered from top to bottom, windows too, with writings and drawings done with spray paint. Me and Lou slapped five. Mama said it was too bad the kids in New York had nothing better to do than spray paint all over the trains. Daddy said that in the cities, even grown-ups wrote all over the trains and buildings too. Daddy called it graffiti. Mama called it a shame. We couldn't wait to get out of school on Monday. We couldn't find any black spray paint anywhere, so they heard about the graffiti. They got an idea that they were going to spray paint and over her picture. Whatever she does, they're going to put graffiti on it. But in the junky hardware store downtown, we found a can of white epoxy paint, the kind you touch up old refrigerators with when they get splotchy or peely. We spent our whole allowance on it, and because it was too late to use our bus passes, we had to walk all the way home, lugging our books, satchels, and gym shoes, and the bag with the epoxy. When we reached the corner of Talia, Farrow, and Fifth, it looked like a block party or something. Half the neighborhood was gathered on the sidewalk in front of the wall. I looked at Lou. He looked at me. We both looked at the bag with epoxy and wondered how we were going to work our scheme. The painter lady's car was nowhere in sight, but there were too many people standing around to do anything. Side Pocket and I and his buddies were leaning on their cue sticks, hunching each other. Daddy was there with a lineman he catches a ride with on Mondays. Mrs. Moore's had her arms flung around the shoulders of the twins on either side of her. Mama was talking with some of her customers, many of them with napkins still at their throats. Mr. Eubanks had come out of the barber shop, followed by a man in striped poncho, half his face shaved, the other half full of foam. So he was in the middle of his shave when he decided to go see what was going on. She really did it, didn't she? Mr. Eubank huffed on his chest. Lots of folks answered right quick that she sure did when they saw the straight razor in his hand. Mama beckoned us over, and then we saw it. The wall. The reds, greens, figures outlined in black, swirls of purple and orange, storms of blues and yellow. It was something. I recognized some of the faces right off. There was Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King is a great, well-known black activist. He's the one that believed in peaceful protesting and wanting the blacks and whites to come together. And there was a man with glasses on and his mouth open like he was laying down a heavy rap. Daddy came up alongside and reminded us that he was Minister Malcolm X, the serious woman with a rifle I knew was Harriet Tubman because my grandma has pictures of her all over the house. So Harriet Tubman, back when back when black people were still slaves, she helped enslaved black people escape to the north where they could be free. It was very dangerous because if she got caught, she would be killed. And I knew Miss Fannie Lou Hammer because a signed photograph of her hangs in the restaurant next to the calendar. Then I let my, so it's a whole bunch of famous Black people that helped in setting slaves free and helping Black people become um, equal to white people. Then I let my eyes follow what looked like a vine. It trailed past a man with a horn and a woman with a big white flower in her hair, a handsome dude in a tuxedo seated at a piano, and a man with goatee holding a book. When I looked more closely, I realized that what had looked like flowers were really faces. One face with yellow petals looked just like Frida Morris, somebody from the neighborhood. One with red petals looked just like Hattie Morris, somebody from the neighborhood. I could hardly believe my eyes. Notice, Side Pocket said, stepping close to the wall with his cue stick like a classroom pointer. There are the flags of liberation, he said in a voice I've never heard him use before. We all stepped closer while he pointed and spoke. Red, black, and green, he said, pointing, falling on the leaf-like flags of the vine. Our liberation flag. And here's Ghana, the Tanzania, Guinea-Bissau, Angola, Mozambique. These are all African countries that had their flags. So she put down the flags of African countries where a lot of the slaves came from. Side Pocket sounded very tall, as though he'd been waiting all his life to give this lesson. Mama tapped us on the shoulder and pointed to a high section of the wall. There was a fierce-looking man with his arms crossed against his chest, guarding a bunch of children. His muscles bulged and looked a lot like my daddy. One kid was looking at a row of books. Lou hunched me because the kid looked like me. The one that looked like Lou was spinning a globe on the tip of his finger like a basketball. There were other kids there with microscopes and compasses. And the more I looked, the more it looked like this fierce man was not so much guarding the kids as defending their right to what they were doing. So all these kids were having the opportunity to become something successful. Then Lou gasped and dropped the paint bag and ran forward, running his hands over a rainbow. He had to tiptoe and stretch to do it. It was so high, I couldn't breathe either. The painter lady had found the chisel marks and had painted Jimmy Lyon's name in a rainbow. Read the inscription, honey, Mrs. Moore said, urging little Frida forward. She didn't have to urge much. Frida marched right up, bent down in a loud voice that made everyone quit oohing and on and listen. She read, "To the people of Taliaferro Street, I dedicate this wall of respect, painted in memory of my cousin, Jimmy Lyons." So she was related to the person that they consider their community hero. And that's why she painted it. And here's the picture of it. So you see in this article, there's a lot of about looking at other people's differences, um, listening to each other, and finding common ground. And so, in your thing over here, when you're writing about the other story, you can also add this one. All right. So, let's add, insert a row below, and we'll put this one is The War of Walls. And right here, you're just going to give a summary of the story. And I would, if I were you, I would cut and paste comments or quotes that will help you. Like the one I really liked was the one, and as you're reading it, as I'm reading it to you, use your highlighter and highlight it. This is the one I liked. So I would want to make sure to include some part of this. I may not do the whole quote, but I would include some part of it, okay? And I think the big thing that I feel is the summary is these boys, uh, two boys were very upset. Two boys were very upset that a strange painter lady was painting the neighborhood wall um, um, which had lots of memories. Okay. Um, she didn't have their same customs or rules of respect, but in the end, um, the neighborhood was patient with her and listened to her and ended up with a great mural that, that gave the history of the Black people and their community and their community. That's what I would put. And what do I feel about this? You got to give people a chance. Got to hear and listen to others and see their perspective and try to work together. Okay. So that's something, it's a really good story that you can use in there. So, um, that should be good. All right. I will see you on the next one.